All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited to be the guest speaker today to talk about nutrition for a healthy heart. I'm going to share my screen because I'm visual. I love to have things to look at, so hopefully you do too. And then we'll get going. I'm going to save questions for the end. If you're listening to the recording, I just encourage you to drop any comments below and tag me, and I will answer those questions that you have. Okay. So, Jennifer, since I can see you, can you just raise your hand that you can see my screen with my presentation? Awesome. Okay. So, my name is Heather Glenn. I think most of you know me. You've probably seen me in groups. If this is your first time um, seeing me or hearing from me, I have been a body partner for 13 years now, kind of how I started running groups like these, and met Christine uh, at a fitness conference. She joined me as a body partner. So we've been really having a good time running groups together, and love that this year we've been able to focus on specific topics in women's health and have guest speakers, various doctors, health professionals, and myself to be able to share really important topics like heart health. I am a nutritional therapy practitioner, means that I understand how the body works and how food can support that, and being able to utilize different foods and ways of eating to support the body in healing, especially if you're dealing with symptoms. And I am also a restorative wellness practitioner, where I learned more about digestive healing and inflammation related to food reactions, and then a certified holistic health coach. Um, and so I just am absolutely passionate about empowering women in their health using food, movement, lifestyle changes, and detoxifying the environment. All right, enough about me. Let's get into the meat. So today I want to talk about three big ideas um, around cardiovascular health and supporting the body nutritionally. So the first big idea is that heart disease is a result of us overconsuming processed foods, specifically refined sugars and grains, and denatured and rancid fats. So it's a processed food disease. And I know there's a lot of misconceptions out there about, fats and meats and other things that can be contributing to that. Maybe we'll have a little time to dive into that today. But the biggest thing, and you'll see on my next slide, is that heart disease has gone up significantly in the last less than 100 years. And that really correlates to processed diets. And so we're really looking at sugars and grains, which can be inflammatory, and then denatured and rancid fats. Basically, that means that fats, the structure of the fat, the normal structure of the fat is changed or becomes toxic. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The next big idea is that the health of our heart is a reflection of the health of our entire body. And so when we're working to support our body and our heart, we always want to look at the 6 foundations of nutritional therapy. And I'll briefly show you those in just a second. And then the last piece is that inflammation is a significant cause of most forms of heart disease. So we're always trying to focus on how to reduce inflammation in our body. Is that taking out inflammatory foods? Is that putting in foods that support reduced inflammation? Is that making changes in our environment that are causing inflammation? Maybe it's toxins. It could be just emotional stress can be inflammatory. So we're always trying to look at ways to reduce overall inflammation in the body. So real quick, those historical trends that I kind of touched on, history of heart disease, you can look at this graph. Now, this particular study was kind of looking at how vitamin sales sort of brought down heart disease, and that could just be a correlation. But what I found interesting about looking at this is that heart disease has 6 times higher now, or was in the 1970s, compared to the 1920s. And in that time frame is when there was the rise of processed and chemically derived foods. And we started shifting more to processed foods and further away from foods that come from the earth or animals that are raised in their natural environment. Do we think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. I think there's a big correlation there. And what's interesting about the number going down in the last few years is that, yes, supplement sales have gone up. Supplements can be supporting that. But I do also think that there's been a lot of great, medical procedures and devices and surgeries and things that have come out to prevent deaths, to help save people. And I also think that there's become more awareness around diet, processed foods, and the impacts on our heart health. Big idea number one: heart disease results from overconsumption of processed foods, refined sugars, grains, and denatured rancid fats. Okay, so consumption of sugar and refined carbs is very stressful to the body because it explodes our blood sugar levels, and our body has to try to maintain a healthy balance. And so it has to respond to that stress of too much blood sugar to bring it down. And the results from that is an overproduction of cortisol, an increase in your blood pressure, and then more inflammation and more damage to tissues in our body. Then refined vegetable oils are inflammatory. They can create unstable and poorly functioning cell walls. So it's really important to know that the cell walls are made up of proteins and fats, and different kinds of fats. And the health of our cell is really based on, like, where are those fats coming from? If we're taking in rancid or non-pliable fats, and that's what our cell walls are being made of, nutrients can't get in, toxins can't get out, hormones can't attach to receptors. The cells are just not going to function well. And vegetable oils are very unstable and can become rancid and not their not natural structure very easily. So we have to really take a look at how many vegetable oils are we taking in. And a lot of processed foods, well, that's my next point, but when heated and not properly stored, those unsaturated vegetable oils can become rancid and toxic. And again, what type of fats do we find in processed food? It's usually those vegetable oils: soy, corn, partially hydrogenated oils. So really becoming more aware of that. All right, so what can we do? A couple of things you can do to kind of tackle the sugar and the fats. One, I always recommend to my clients to take a week to track their sugar intake, really talking more about the added sugars. But if you wanted to be really detailed, you could look at sugars from fruit. You could look at, the natural sugars in foods. And you could look at your starchy carbohydrate intake and consider that a sugar, because really those turn to sugar in your body very quickly. So you're just trying to get a baseline of what you're at right now. Then you want to work to just reduce it from there. Make small improvements over time. It's amazing how when you start paying attention to sugar, you'll realize it's in everything. And can you find other foods that don't have added sugars where they don't need to be? The next thing you can do is use natural sweeteners like monk fruit or stevia that don't have calorie and don't impact your blood sugar levels, so that you're not stressing your body, by driving up blood sugar. And then always avoid artificial sweeteners. They're chemicals that your body does not recognize, and it can create a lot of functional issues for you. Number 3, swapping vegetable oils with more stable saturated fats when cooking. So if you're using canola oil to cook, or you're even using walnut oil or even olive oil at too high of heats, that's going to change the structure of the oil, and it's going to be seen as a toxin in your body, and it's not going to work effectively. So when you're cooking at high heats, it's better to actually use saturated fats. And I could have a whole talk on how saturated fats have basically been demonized, and they're really important for our health and they're safer for cooking. So just think about using things like coconut oil or butter's a little bit more stable at high heat. I like to use things like my leftover bacon grease or duck fat, um, things that give food a lot of really yummy flavor and stay stable for you. The next one is buying oils in dark glass bottles. Those plastic bottles, especially the light colored ones, or even sometimes it's hard to find every oil in a dark colored bottle, but that's just going to protect the oil from heat. Um, and glass is always safer than plastic because plastics can leach into our foods. Um, and oops, I didn't spell unrefined correctly, but that's unrefined is the best option. But refined oils can sometimes be more stable for cooking. So sometimes that's not a terrible choice. Lastly, just learn to make some of your favorite packaged foods. Maybe it's muffins or even tortillas. I've been experimenting with things like that, making them from scratch so that you know how much sugar's in it, what type of grains you're using, what type of oils you're using, and how it's actually prepared and cooked. Okay, big idea number 2 is supporting the foundations of health. I won't go into all of these, but these are the 6 foundations of nutritional therapy. So when I work with a client, these are the big areas that we focus on. Improving digestion, because you are what you absorb. So no matter how healthy you eat, if your gut's a mess and you're not digesting and absorbing, you're not going to get those nutrients. Blood sugar regulation, we've touched on that a little bit. High and low blood sugar is very stressful for the body, creates more inflammation. So we always want to be supporting healthy blood sugar levels. Fats and minerals, we're going to talk a little bit about those 2 items. Whole food nutrition, real foods, properly sourced, properly prepared, properly stored. And then hydration, of course, is always really, really important in any health program. Okay. 5 truths about fats. We're going to talk a little bit about fats. There are no inherently bad fats by nature. It's how we source them, how we process them, store them, or cook with them that can make them unhealthy for us. We need a mix. So just to touch on that really quickly, if you're thinking, there's a lot of talk about animal fats, eating too much meat. I am always a proponent of balance in our diets and matching that with a person's bio-individual need. But animal meats can be very nutritious and beneficial for us if they're cleanly sourced. So a lot of times the inflammation that we see from studies of people eating red meat and meats is they've been eating conventional meats. So these are animals that are not eating their natural foods. They're eating inflammatory corn versus grass-fed. They have been injected with steroids, hormones, antibiotics, and all of those things we eat when we eat the animal. So it's really important to get cleanly sourced animal products because those are going to be healthier and less inflammatory for us. Okay, next point is we do need a mix of all types of fats, saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats. We want them in balanced proportions. Each of them serves a role in our body. I won't go into that today, but imbalance, having too many of one or not enough of another can lead to unhealth. So we really want to have a mix of those fats in our diet every day. Some fats support inflammation, so they'll actually inflame the body, and some will reduce the inflammation. And we actually need to be able to do both. Our body needs to be able to inflame when there's something foreign in our body that we need to tackle, or we have an injury and we need to take care of that. But we also need to have the balance of being able to uninflame or anti-inflame when that threat is taken care of. All right, so again, balance key there. Point number 4, omega-3 fats are the best source of energy for the heart. So super essential to the cell membrane of the heart tissues and the coronary arteries. And then moving into point 5, most of us are deficient in omega-3s and consuming too many omega-6s. A lot of times the omega-6s we're consuming have been denatured or become rancid. And that throws our ratios out of balance. So I just put this little chart down here that I think is so interesting to see. You're looking at the Paleolithic diet where omega-3s, you're getting, a 3.5 to 25.2 grams per day of omega-3s. And now our current diet, we're only getting 1.2. So it's a lot less than historically humans have had. And then we're getting a lot more of those omega-6s. And then it's really throwing the ratio out of balance, seeing that it's at 16.7 now. So sometimes eating less of the omega-6s can help with the balance, but the best thing you can do is eat more of those omega-3s. We'll talk about sources of that in just a minute. I want to touch on minerals and heart health. So 2 really important minerals, magnesium and calcium. So calcium is going to trigger the contraction and relaxation of the heart, which obviously is super important. And then magnesium helps to stabilize the rhythm. And then it's important to know that calcium is not going to work well if the calcium and magnesium ratio is off balance. And that can actually lead to some of those irregular heartbeats that you might feel from time to time. So of course, the big picture idea with this one is not to necessarily go consume a lot more calcium unless maybe you've tested that and you know you're low. Most of the time it's because we're deficient in magnesium, and so that balance is off. And magnesium can be really hard to get in the diet, and most women are deficient. The next thing to understand is that sodium, is not inherently dangerous for the heart. It's the imbalance of sodium to potassium. So like calcium and magnesium kind of like work in a pair, kind of offset each other. Sodium and potassium have a similar relationship. And most of us are low in potassium. And, processed foods are higher in sodium than potassium. So that drives sodium up, leaving potassium low. And potassium will actually help to excrete the sodium. So same concept as with magnesium, if we can look at ways to boost our potassium, that could actually ensure we're not over the top on sodium, but also give us a little more wiggle room to have some sodium in our diet. And I'm not talking table salt. I'm talking, Himalayan sea salt, those that are not processed and have more minerals and electrolytes in them. All right, moving on, I want to talk really quickly about 2 types of heart disease, 2 types of people, 2 types of ways to support people nutritionally. So we're looking at either a congestive heart failure type or a myocardial infarction type, think heart attack. So congestive heart failure, we talked a little bit about this with Dr. Anita Harris, but the heart kind of getting weak and failing, enlarging of the pump, and the heart muscle kind of loses its tone. And then of course, most of us kind of know what a heart attack is, or at least the idea of it, kind of that seizing up of the heart. So we call these in nutritional therapy the B and G complexes. And in a minute, we'll talk about what that means, but it's related to the type of B vitamins that someone would need. And B vitamins can be very helpful in supporting the heart. So this will be interesting for you to look at and think, do I tend toward a B type or do I tend toward a G type? So B types are going to be hypotensive versus a G type is hypertensive. B types, like, you will crave more sugar. So if you find that you crave, if you would choose a cookie over a glass of wine, that might be an indication for you of which type you are. B types tend to feel tired and run down a lot, where G types feel good and they're amped up and they're always ready to go. Um, Kind of that hyper type. Um, and then B types will get sick more often, and G types tend to not get sick. Um, and then again, the B types kind of tend toward the heart failure, where the G types more the heart attacks. And then B types need more B1, G types need more B2. And then if you look at the kind of the detail of these two, this can be another way to kind of help you decide, are you a B or a G type? If you guys want to take a, so I won't go through this, but if you want to take a screenshot of this, go for it so you can use it. And then I'm going to move on to the next piece about the B vitamins. So if you're a B type, you want to focus on thiamine, B1, and other Bs that are soluble in alcohol. So B12, B6, B4, which most people don't hear about. B4, you're not going to find it in a supplement. But, focusing on a B complex that, or maybe it's not a complex of everything, but maybe more specific to B1, B12, B6. There are two supplements that I will recommend to clients who want support in heart health. One that the formula is actually created for a B type, and one where the formula is actually created for a G type. So a G type is going to want more riboflavin or B2 and more B vitamins that are not soluble in alcohol. So the threes, the PABA, folic acid, choline, and inositol. So, if you really want to be specific about your nutrition, you can kind of see what you lean toward and even try, some of those B vitamins to support and see if you notice any difference in how you feel. All right, so I want to talk about nutrients for heart health. So we talked about omega-3s. And again, seafood, fish and seafood are always going to be the best and highest doses of omega-3s. And you can see the higher ones are mackerel, which often you'll find canned. Well, I don't know that I've seen it fresh anywhere. But that one is very high in omega-3s. Salmon is probably one of the next best ones. You can do cod liver oil if you want to take a swig of that. I don't think cod itself is actually pretty low, but they're looking at the liver of the cod and making a concentrated oil from that. So it will have more omega-3s. That could be good for someone who maybe doesn't like seafood, but can like quickly swig that down just to get in that extra dose of omega-3s. And then again, if you want to take a screenshot of this to grab the other ones, kind of get an idea of the best seafoods or the highest omega-3 seafoods. And then the two minerals we talked about, calcium and magnesium. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. Again, I won't go through all the pieces. This will give you an idea of where you can try to get more of these in your diet, with the underlying idea that it's always about whether you can digest and absorb those foods. So supporting digestion is really key. All right. And then vitamin Bs, which we just talked about. So nutritional yeast and brewer's yeast are a great source, one of the best sources, if tolerated. If you have candida or you're sensitive to yeasts and you don't tolerate them well, probably not the best option for you. Liver, great source of B vitamins. You could try to hide it in your food if you're willing to try the real thing. They do also make desiccated liver capsules if you want to kind of take it in that way. Some grains, I'm not always a proponent of promoting a lot of grains, but you can get some Bs from there. And then the last bullet, want to just point out that B vitamins are also made by your microbiome. So you want to make sure you're feeding your microbiome and that it's a healthy microbiome, healthy and balanced. And then I just put a little image here of some of the other foods that can be supportive of heart health. And again, feel free to take a screenshot of any of this.
I have a quick question about tomatoes.
Sure. Yeah.
So tomatoes are naturally a nightshade or inflammatory. So how does it relate to heart health for those?
Well, I don't know that they may not be, I think, inflammatory for everyone. Again, it's bio-individual, but it is high in lycopene, which can be helpful. So I think with foods like these, sometimes it's about balance and knowing your bio-individual needs. So I think if you don't do well with lectins, then I wouldn't worry about the tomatoes. But if you do fine with tomatoes, it can be a helpful source for you. I don't know if that helps. But...
Thank you. It does. Thank you.
Okay. So last slide here, and then we'll do some Q&A. So foods to reduce or avoid. So conventional meats, anytime you can purchase your meats organic, grass-fed, ideally grass-fed and finished. Sometimes animals will be grass-fed until they're almost ready to be slaughtered, and then they'll be fed grain at the end to kind of bulk them up. So kind of label trickery, I guess, sometimes, but look for grass-fed, fat, grass-finished if you can. And of course, with all of these things, you're never going to be able to be perfect with it. And sometimes obsessing towards perfection on things like this can actually cause you more stress and more inflammation. So being perfect is not always better, but when you can make those choices, make those choices so that you can move yourself more towards health. Processed vegetable oils and oils heated or stored improperly. And this could be a whole conversation in of itself. It's like what oils to use when and how to store them and how to buy them. But I think just being aware of that today and starting to like do your own learning and research around it and looking at your foods to see what's in it can be a good starting point. And then of course, reducing refined carbohydrates and sugar is always ideal because most of the time there's no nutritional value there anyway. So focus on adding in foods that have a lot of nutritional value. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop share and then open it up for questions. So you guys can, I'll look at the chat, but you can unmute yourself. Hi, I'm so excited to see some more faces. Kim, Olga, good to see you. All right. Yay. Christine says, this is so good. Oh, yay. I'm glad that you found it helpful. Who's got a question?
I do.
Okay, Brenda.
I feel like sometimes, like, if I maybe have a period of time where I eat unhealthy and I feel like there's bloating in my stomach, if it's like an imbalance due to sodium or potassium or magnesium, is there like one thing, regardless if you're a type B or G or whatnot, is there one thing that you incorporate in your diet each day from like a vitamin or supplement that helps, or it could be a food item that that you just eat every day just to help with inflammation, regardless of where you're at in the imbalance, I guess. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Two things though. One, you kind of mentioned when you're off sort of your healthier eating patterns, you notice more in your gut, more bloating, maybe, I think you said bloating.
Mhm.
That's probably more related to digestive function and microbiome
Okay.
imbalances.
Okay.
So if I were to say, things I might do to support that, always thinking kind of starting by supporting the digestive system at the top is not eating in a hurry, not being stressed when you eat, chewing your food really well so that your
Okay.
stomach can better digest the food so that they don't sit there and allow kind of fermentation to happen, which can create that gas.
Okay.
And there are some supplements that I recommend with clients, again, based on when I dial more into specific digestive symptoms.
Okay.
Yeah, that's going to be more probably a digestive thing. And you can always try a glass of warm water. I usually do half a lemon and 1 to 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. And that will help to kind of prime and acidify the stomach environment to help digest your foods. So that's like not a supplement option, but you can actually use a whole food.
Right.
And if you feel better, then that probably is an indication that you may have low stomach acid levels and you might need to do some supporting there.
Okay.
In terms of kind of the inflammation and heart health, something that I take every day is a higher dose of omega-3 fish oils. And I really want to emphasize, I'm happy to recommend the product that I use. Fish oils, just like any kind of oil, very unstable, can go rancid really easily. And where you source it and how you process it, it's really important. So I don't recommend going on Amazon or Costco or even Whole Foods and buying something there. You really want to get clinical grade when you're doing fish oils, to ensure that they're not rancid. But that is
Okay.
something that can be very, very helpful for inflammation.
Okay.
Awesome.
And I think I will want to have a side conversation with you about that. I know we talked about it before, so.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just shoot me a message.
Great. Okay.
All right. Teresa says, great information. Thank you. Have to get back to work. I'm glad this is helpful. I actually have fun doing this stuff. I love it.
I was just really intrigued by the B and G ones because I love sweets. So I would pick sweets over alcohol, but I don't ever get sick and I have lots of energy. And so I would almost say that I'm more of a G person. So that's interesting. So how do you figure that out?
I mean, I don't know that you'd ever know unless, say, you went and had a bunch of heart tests done, or you actually tested your vitamin levels to see if, I don't know, you needed more of one versus the other. I think the idea is, I feel like I was trying to think of an example of something else you would do where not every answer is going to line up with you, but you're trying to figure out which one you lean more toward. And you actually could go back and forth between the two. I mean, I would guess that you're probably more of a G, just knowing you.
Mhm.
But
Right.
it could always be a start to like maybe focus on. Here's the interesting thing about supplements. Sometimes it's great to find a multivitamin or a B complex that has a little bit of everything, but it doesn't have a lot of any one thing. And if your body really
Mhm.
needs one thing, Like maybe you're really low in B6 or you're really low in B12. You may not be getting a therapeutic dose of that in a multi. And so sometimes it's actually better to just, I'm going to get a B6, I'm going to get a B12 and like add those in and do it, 30 to 60 days, long enough to really notice if something feels different for you. And sometimes
Right.
you don't notice that you feel different, but if you did maybe your blood work, you would notice something different.
Okay. Good to know. That was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Olga or Kim or Jennifer, do you have anything you want to ask before we jump off? No? Kim says thumbs up. Jennifer's good. All right. And I'm sure Olga's probably at work. All right, guys. Well, I will let you guys get on with your day. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be here. And I really hope you learned something. And don't let the learning stop here. Share this with other people so you can spread the health to others.
Thank you, Heather, for sharing your knowledge and all the great information that you gave us. Wow, that was an awesome presentation. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to do it. I love an opportunity whenever I can get one.
Great.
All right, guys, gals, have an awesome day and we'll see you inside our group.
Sounds great. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.